We begin the prophets of the Second Temple period. According to tradition, the last of the prophets are Hagai, Zechariah, and the final one, Malachi. And so we begin today with the book of Hagai. Bishnat shtayim lidaryavesh hamelech b'chodesh hashishi biyom echad lachodesh hayad dvar Adonai biyad Hagai hanavi el Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel pachat Yehuda v'el Yoshua ben Yotzadak hakohen hagadol lemor. The opening verse is a real mouthful. So it's the second year of King Darius. So this is approximately about the year 520 before the Common Era, something of that sort. It could be off by a year one way or another. 65 or so years after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, and prophecy comes to Hagai the prophet, and he's supposed to go and speak to Zerubbabel, the son of Shaltiel, who is the governor of Yehuda, and Yoshua, the son of Yehotzadak, who is the high priest. You may be familiar with this word, Zerubbabel. Everybody knows it from Ma'osur. Hates Bavel, Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel is the son of Shaltiel. Zerubbabel is the Pachat. We'll call him like a Pasha. He's like the local governor, appointed to be in charge of the Jewish affairs that the Persians are allowing them to have a certain sense of autonomy in the former, we'll call it, colony of Judea. Now, who is this person, Zerubbabel? Zerubbabel is a very important person. Doesn't say it here fully, but Zerubbabel is the grandson of Yechoniah. Zerubbabel is a direct descendant of King David, of David HaMelech. That's who Zerubbabel is. So word here is coming to Hagai to go to speak to the high priest, a descendant of Aaron, and that would be, as it says down the bottom, the end of the pasuk, Yehoshua ben Yehotzadak, and to Zerubbabel, who is the political leader. So here, look what we have. We have a prophet, we have a priest, we have a descendant of the king. And this is what God wants to communicate to those two leaders. Ko amar Adonai tzvaot lemor. Ha'aman zeh amru lo et ba et beit Adonai lihibanut. What's the issue? The people are saying it's not time to rebuild the house. Now, a little bit of history. In the year approximately, I'll be getting it slightly wrong, 535, 538 before the Common Era, when Cyrus Koresh conquered defeated the Babylonians. That was the ascendancy of the Persian Empire. Cyrus had a foreign policy that allowed countries or allowed principalities, whatever we want to call them, to rebuild their kingdoms. That's what he believed in. They should rebuild not their kingdoms, their places of worship. He wasn't concerned about everybody worshiping his God. He wanted everybody to pay taxes. So he sent out, you can go to the British Museum next time you're in Britain, the Weissmans. I'm sure you're probably going there next week or something. You cruise to England. So you're going, there's something called the Cyrus cylinder there. You can look it up online. There are pictures of it all over. And it is a cylinder that demonstrates the foreign policy that says what Cyrus, after he took over, what he said to local states, that happened to be, I think, in Nineveh or Babylon, something like that, telling them that they could rebuild their temple and that would be okay and nothing was wrong with that. And he also communicated the same, we'll see it in a long time from now in the book of Ezra, to the Jews, that they were allowed to rebuild their temple. And that was in the year 538. There were some problems we'll read about in the book of Ezra that didn't allow. There were local groups, we'll call them the Samaritans, who caused all sorts of problems, wanting to build the temple themselves, not allow the Jews to build the temple. And so basically the permission that was granted to the Jews to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash had been taken away. And then Darius, about 15 years later, who is now the king of Persia, Cyrus the Great has died. Darius the Great is now king, has once again given the Jews permission to rebuild the temple. But for whatever reason, it's not clear as of yet, they are not doing it. And that is where Hagai's prophecy comes in. That's the backdrop and the background to the book. And the people are saying the time has not yet come to rebuild the house of God. Continuing in verse 3. So now God says to Hagai as follows. Is it time for you to sit in your houses while the house is lying in ruins? And just contrast, it's interesting to just think about, right? Go back to the time when King David wanted to build the palace. What did he say? God, you're in a little closet, and I am a king. I am sitting in this beautiful palace, the cedar palace. You should have a cedar palace as well. God says, no, it's not time. I didn't ask you. Here, the people are sitting in their houses, presumably not beautiful palaces, but they are not building the temple. It's time to rebuild the temple. V'ata, Pasuk verse 5, so God says, think about what's been happening. Zaratam harbe v'havei ma'at, achol v'ein lisova, shato v'ein lishochra, lavosh v'ein lachomlo, v'mishtaker el tzrur nakuv. What's been happening? What's your excuse that you're not building the temple? Well, you haven't been successful. You plant a lot, but the produce is very few. The yield is small. You eat, but you're not satisfied. You drink, but you don't get full. You clothe yourself, but the clothing doesn't keep you warm. Anything that you earn, it's like a leaky purse. Sounds like inflation in 2023, 2024, right? It's like you fill up the bag, but there's a hole in the bag, and all the stuff falls out of the bottom. That's your excuse. You're saying we don't have the means to build the Beit HaMikdash. Continuing verse 7, so God says, think about what has happened. Go up to the hills, get some wood, rebuild the house, and then I'll look favorably upon you, says God. This is the Phil Knight verse of Tanakh. Just do it. You don't have to build a Beit HaMikdash as grandiose as the one of Shlomo. Just get it done. Just go up to the mountain and find some wood and build a house. Pano, we're in verse 9. El harbe v'nelim atva v'etam abai v'nafachti bo yad mena uma Adonai tzvot yad beiti asher hu charev v'atem ratzim ish leveito. You had big eyes. You had delusions of grandeur. You're expecting much, but you're getting little. When you brought it home, right, you would say, what is this? And you think the reason why you can't build a temple is because you're unsuccessful. But what I'm telling you is, while there is no Beit HaMikdash, then you won't be successful. That's why the skies above you withheld their moisture, and the earth has withheld its yield. There's not a good crop. There's not a lot coming out. You think, when I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to build a temple. God says, no, just do it. Al haaretz v'al ha'arim v'al ha'dagan v'al dirosh v'al yitar v'al asher totzi ha'adama v'al ha'adam v'al ha'beima v'al kol yagia kapayim. And therefore, that's why there's a drought, there's a famine. That's why it's so hot on the hills, and the wine and the oil and all the things that are produced. That's why it's not going well. You guys, again, you think I'll wait till I'm wealthy. And God says, no, don't wait till you're wealthy. The temple has to be rebuilt. Don't worry if it's not the most grandiose, beautiful temple. It just needs to be rebuilt. This is a prophecy that Hagai gets and is given and communicates to Zerubbabel and Shaltiel. And what is their responses? Verse 12, Pasuk Yud Bet, Vayishma Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel v'Yehoshua ben Yotzadak HaKohen HaGadol. B'chol sha'irita am b'kol Adonai Elohehem v'al divrei Hagai and Avi kasher shalcho Adonai Elohehem v'yiru am mipnei Adonai. Amazing moment. Doesn't seem to happen so often. Zerubbabel and Yoshua and all of the people, they listen to the words of Hagai. Vayomer Hagai malach Adonai malachut Adonai la'am le'mor ani itchem nu'um Adonai. Hagai said, Hagai was God's messenger who was fulfilling God's mission. He says to the people, I am with you. By I, that is to say, God is saying, I am with you. Vaya'ar Adonai et ruach Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel pachat Judah. V'et ruach Yoshua ben Yehotzadak HaKohen HaGadol. V'et ruach kol shirita am v'yavo v'yasum lacha b'beit Adonai tzvaot. Elohehem. And so this charge, this challenge of Hagai, it works. And God gives spirit to Zerubbabel and Yehoshua and the people, and they go and they start to build the Beit HaMikdash. Bayom esrim va'arba l'chodesh b'shishi b'shnat shtayim l'Daryavesh HaMelech. When does this happen? On the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of King Darius. So what's the 6th month? Is that the month of Elul, I believe? Right? So Nisan's the 1st month, Tishrei is the 7th month, so Elul, Tishrei, it should be Elul, 24th day of the month of Elul. The Jewish people get the word, and they start to go and to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. When was it came to him? It was the 1st day of the 6th month. So it's some 3 weeks later that now they put it together. And here we see something that's, just think about all of everything that went into the building the first temple and Shlomo and all of the servitude and the sending the people up to Lebanon to cut down the fanciest cedar trees and bring it back, and how the temple then became a place that, in a sense, it wasn't the temple itself, it was the way that Shlomo and his son Rechavam and their taxes and what they demanded from the people became something that drove the kingdom of Israel to separate into two. Here, that's not the vision of the temple. And here we don't see, at least at this point, the fancy artisans and the fancy crafts, right? When you go to Jerusalem, you see, they talk about the second temple and its glory, but that's not at this point. That's Herod. That's hundreds of years after this. And here we see, the hope is that the second temple is going to be rebuilt. And something that's very, very significant, very important here, again, we started with this, is who these people are. This is a second temple. This is a new temple. But the foundations are laid upon the first temple. It's not some new family of priests. This Yoshua, the son of Yehotzadak, is direct descendant of Aaron. And Zerubbabel is a direct descendant of King David. And that will become significant in the next chapters. But again, here, just to summarize, just so we know, right, in the year 586, that's when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. We read about it in different books, most detailed in Yirmiyahu, as well as shorter in the book of Melachim. It's about 65 or so years later. Yirmiyahu talks about that there are going to be 70 years of Babylonian dominance. There are two different understandings of what that means. Either that's from when the Babylonians defeat the Assyrians around the year 612 or so until around 540 or so when they are defeated by the Persians, or from the year 586 to approximately 516, the 70 or so years from the destruction of the Second Temple to the rebuilding of the Second Temple. We're in the year about 520 or so. And God says to the Jewish people, stop making excuses. Stop saying we're not wealthy enough. Stop saying we're not successful enough. If you draw the biggest plans and you have the biggest ideas, well, that doesn't always happen. It's not always possible. Just do it. Just go up to the mountain. Don't worry if you don't have the finest cedars from Lebanon. The Second Temple needs to be built. You need to have a place to communicate with God. You need to have a place that the Jewish people can be proud, that they can call home. And when those things happen, the other things that you're worried about will fall right in line as well.